sort of suggestion to sort of put it in back in the context while you were standing there saying to me. Like, I think the basic question we sort of skipped is that why the hell would you bother to make a non-linear composition in the first place? We kept talking about all context and stuff, but like, if you put it, but I think that's the whole point. You need to have a reason to do it.
Yeah, but you mentioned financial reason in game art.
For example, that's the one reason.
The other one could be playfulness. If you have some kind of interactive.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this a bit or not. I mean, the interpreting part to make it more organic, to make it more human, to make it.
But that's not the only thing.
No, it's not the only thing. But it's an important thing.
But why would you need such a quality in a composition? That's the thing. Like, for example, basically, it's sort of, well, for example, one of the reasons is that you don't need to have a...
Well, for the real-time experience. Right?
Yeah, I'm not saying any of them is wrong. I think all you say is just valid. Each of them are valid.
Some heat is good.
If anyone wants some water.
Like what he said is one of the reasons. What the financial is one reason, and that if it's a I don't know dance piece, maybe you just need really fast and fast, easy follow up through sections or whatever.
I'm personally very interested in like either everlasting pieces or extreme long compositions that are impossible to completely write out by yourself. So you need systems for that, non-linear ones.
Yeah, maybe a good example might be the sound. What's it called? When you develop the sounds for an not social. I can't think of it. For example, if you create a soundscape for a park or something, for public spaces.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I think Jorrit has been working on something in Brussels for a square, where he basically created a competition that would last for, I don't know, 20 years.
Forever.
Yeah, because in 20 years you just forget to clean it up. But,
or then it loops.
It's like a composition that lasts for 1,000 years.
Another question, like, actually that's interesting. If that definitely would help you to make such hugely, immensely long pieces. But we, like, are, like, used to a certain limit, like, to actually appreciate a how to say, a start and an end. Like our experience is linear, so in that sense it needs to have a start and an end, in a way.
It needs to have entry points.
Yeah, and exit points. So when we don't have those exit points, or how to say this, how do you make sure that when you enter that everlasting piece, your entry point will be different than mine because you arrived in the 20, then I arrived in the 2 years later. How do you make sure as a composer or the designer of the software that composes in real life, whatever, how do you make sure that it's still enjoyable in terms of listening experience?
This is what we struggled with as well while we were making the thing for the sound piece in Rotterdam. Because it lasts for half an hour. We're doing a thing for the square, the Schouwburgplein in Rotterdam, which has speakers in the ground. And we struggled with, okay, how to make it interesting enough for when someone just walks past. So how do you get sucked in, or how do you... We didn't really get to the... How to do it tomorrow.
Well, yeah. Well, what we came up with, concept-wise, was using audio bursts. So to have sort of like not that long mini compositions that together form a bigger whole. But in that way, if somebody enters, no, just like having shorter pieces that have starts and ends. And so if you walk in as a visitor, then you'll just have to wait for, or one is already busy, and then you'll get your end and you'll get your entry point again.
But that's again a cell-based system. No.
That's what?
No, it's going to be it's going to be composed.
Yeah.
In looping.
Because
There's no way to implement the system there.
It's just
But half an hour is a short structure
Yeah,
compared to.
exactly. But in this instance, there's just not the technology to do something that, for one, keeps on playing and two, has some interesting structure behind it. But I would personally much more like it to create a system for this.
yeah.
And you can also create systems that create sort of like sound movements that have starts and ends. And
Actually, that's really. I mean, maybe you can reframe it better than I will ever do. But the composition, what's really important in composition is it form, or is it what is it?
Well,
Like,
you mean like classical composition?
Yeah, or any when you're doing some sort of, even maybe with live electronics, there tends to be some sort of form, whether very conventional forms, but some sort of form. I mean, if you cannot sort of frame it in your mind
as a structure.
Yeah, and it just gets like, what is it? It just sort of becomes like, you know. And I was thinking maybe that's the most challenging part, when you cannot control the form that's going to emerge out of it. Not necessarily the content that's playing, but
when it's kind of interactive, it's a lot easier, because when it's interactive, or when there's an interactive element, it becomes a lot easier when there's a visual input as well. If you see the connection, and then it suddenly becomes a lot more clear.
You see the connection between input and output?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you mean the visual?
Well, you're talking about form stuff, so I'm really tired. You're talking about a certain form within a certain range of time. And
compositional form, eh? Not visual.
No, composition. But when you give a certain impulse to a system, then that becomes a lot more clear than when you don't do anything. Of course. No, no one.
I didn't follow.
Well, it's if you don't know what's going to happen in time, and you still want to have a musical form, then interaction can sort of lead that form. Like the interactor does something, and the music responds to it, and so suddenly the music gets a meaning out of that.
Yeah, the meaning derives from the interaction.
But if you don't have interaction,
more important.
Sorry?
Structure, the movements of the music is more important than the.
Yeah, than the overall structure. Yeah.
What do you mean, Andrew? Just like, I want to understand.
How something is, how it develops, the sound, the sound quality, the dynamics, the melody.
So there's sort of middle layer, if it's like a market, middle layer, and then not the details, not the overall structure.
Yeah,
but
I think you can make entry points and endpoints.
But if you don't have interaction, if I don't have my input
that's
output,
our thing.
then how do you communicate?
Yeah. The thing we talked about when making something for the square was like, okay, what would be the approximate time that someone is on the square? So we're talking about how long does it take to pass over the square. So, and that you're going to take that as a sound object kind of thing for that moment. But of course, it might be that someone passes over the square and it's in the middle of a sound object, so you don't get to hear it from your entrance point isn't synced with the start of the sound object.
No, exactly. Yeah.
But you could also make multiple entry points within one sound object and make it even more fluid.
But these are more practical techniques. I like it for individuals.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the main issue where we're talking all this.
Multiple entry and exit points are really, it's a nice idea.
Yeah, but it's also it gives a sort of musical clarity to what you're hearing, because if you walk into something that's if you walk into anything that's in the middle of happening, it's really hard to comprehend and really hard to make sense of.
And jumping into a conversation that's been going on for an hour.
Yeah, well, if you even if you walk into a very like minimal techno is probably one of the most easy music to understand, just a four beats and 2 beats in between. If you walk into a party that's halfway through and everybody's dancing to it, and you're just walking in, it's really hard. Like, hey, you need some time to get into that mode and to get into the groove before you can appreciate it.
But with minimal techno, to continue with your example, imagine that first of all you walk to the venue, you hear a bit of the music outside, then you walk into the bar area, people are drinking and it gets louder, you hang up your coat, whatever, then you walk into the main area and there it starts, there's the party. That's a much more gradual thingy.
Yeah, so within that moment from hearing it from outside until entering the main hall, there has been entry points.
Yeah. But what I sorry, I wasn't done.
Okay.
Because what I wanted to say about the idea with the square, you had speakers in the ground, huh? So wouldn't it be an idea to have the main composition, so to say, play in the center ring of the speakers, or a sort of a circle inside the circle, and then the periphery acts as a sort of intro to what is playing.
Yeah, but these are all things which are technically not possible.
It's basically one stream that has hardwired in
it's four channels wired up in a really weird way. So this is all not
But that's a good.
That's a good idea.
In another application, that's a good one.
But what it basically all these ideas boil down to is how do you involve a listener into your non-linear system?
Yeah, how do you
make sense
to them?
Also involves the listener, I think. When you walk into a dance club, you sort of have a cultural background and you can deduct logically what's going on and to what phase the party is. So okay, you have to adjust physically your mood to it, but you sort of know what's happening. It's
you know what to adjust to.
Or or when you're switching through radio stations, you know that the song is at the chorus or at the verse, or you know that the sonata is at this duration, if you know the style.
But
So we come back to this concept of style, cultural reference, within which we improvise, we perform. It's like Mozart improvising. He would improvise within his own cultural reference kind of thing. And if you wanted to improvise Mozart, like we were talking outside, you would have to study every single piece of Mozart and his contemporaries to deduct the style and then improvise in that. And I think they have made algorithms.
Which can do.
Yeah, and they wrote Mozart's Symphony number 42. He wrote 41 of them. So they wrote a new Mozart symphony by algorithms.
So it would be kind of interesting, like with that example you gave with the composition that moves back and forward in loop. If you dial into that, it's pretty hard to.
You cannot tell
where you are. Yeah.
That's the whole power of that composition, right? That you lose track of time. That's also because it's so long.
And that's the case with your Square project. Like a person walks up and finds this situation happening, and you don't know. Has it been 20 minutes or did it just start?
Yeah, but you're creating like miniature experiences within that.
But I think it's a question that it doesn't matter. Like people, Einstein on the beach, it was 4 hours long. You could walk in and out of the theater anytime. Or other people doing 12-hour, performances, and you take your sleeping bag and you sleep and you wake up and it's still going on. And you have breakfast,
But actually,
it doesn't matter.
In this case, for example, I don't know if it's the same, but for example, the Rotterdam piece, for example, doesn't necessarily have how to say, it's all, at the end of it, it's all up to the listener just realizing there's something going on. And then deciding to take their time and then leaving. They don't, the piece doesn't necessarily have to adjust itself to something else on the fly. It's fixed. It's just the experience as it is and in its tiny way. But for example, if you're doing, for example, let's take, instead of game mode, let's take a dance improvisation, and again, to make it a bit easy on us, let's say it's structured improvisation, so at least it has three acts, and in one act you have milestones, whatever. But within that you have to somehow play some music that you compose, but it should be, it's in big pieces, again, it's in cells, like samples or loops or whatever. You have to organize it in time with those improvised moments that you don't know when it's going to happen. So, like, if it didn't have the structure, even, these acts, or let's just say for Act 1, how can you make it that, how to say, how I think that's the challenge. It sounds like as it's an intended form. It has an intended form, but it's still parallels to the decision that's been made on real time by something outside of its outside the music. That's the dance, whatever visual part. Are you following me? Like there's this music which is sort of composed, but in tiny pieces that can hook up together just like so. But and over time in that one act, you don't know when you're gonna play one cell after another, or which one's gonna come after another. But you want to have it communicate you a form, a sense of form, a sense of composition, not just like I played random pieces just because it sounded good. But it has a form, but that form also parallels what's going on the stage. So when you have something that you have to parallel to, how do you communicate a form in a nonlinear structure? That's a really real challenge, I suppose. Because in your case, you don't have to parallel anything.
No, that's true.
And then you can just leave it to the people to just say like, okay, I made sense out of it, now I'm going to leave.
Well, one way, if you want to parallel it and you don't know beforehand what that dancer in this case is going to do, one way to do it is to shorten the cells, so you're more flexible and it's easier to adjust. If you take that to its extreme, you get to the microsounds thing and create a granular cell system with millions of cells and millions of meanings and millions of ways to get from one space to another space.
Yeah.
So that will be a completely fluent system that create a very, very large variety of sounds, like clouds of sounds that could very easily follow.
You fix the part. Okay, you fix the paralleling part. How are you going to fix the suggesting a form to the audience on the fly?
Well, isn't
well, you have so much expressive power within all the tiny cells, and you can overlap them.
But first of all, you probably need millions of CPU for that.
Let's assume that we have that.
Sorry, that was unfair.
No, CPU isn't really a problem.
But don't you think it might be a better idea to work with a sort of a state system in which you, for example, in Act 1, you know that you have 3 soft pieces and 2 frantic freak out.
It's like using a max patch for each state. Basically.
Well, yeah, exactly. So you have one for each state. You have a certain range of musical material. For example, with a cell system or morpheme or whatever, and then you can switch dynamically between the states, and that can develop your structure.
Yeah, Marike, I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but you worked on the panopticon thing, right? Which was a dance piece, which was being the dance was being camera tracked, and that resulted in live musical material based on the dance scene. How did you work out a form for that?
Yeah. Good.
Sorry, what was it exactly?
It was a dance performance with interactive music and video. And the dance, there was a top on top of the dance floor, there was an infrared camera. And we divided the piece in different scenes. And yeah, I had nothing to do with the programming, or at least not in the building part of the software.
No, but that's why I ask you, because
Conceptually,
how did you do it? Yeah, structure.
Yeah, for example, the first act was more about organic behavior of human beings.
The dancing movies?
Yeah, dancing movies, and the software was developed with the same concept. And the second act was more about friction between this organic behavior of human beings and a machine, and we created a new patch for the scene, and then we decided to make choices how to connect those patches.
But like in the first scene, for example, how long was the first scene?
What was the criterion to change from the first act to the second? Was it a certain time, or was one of you pressing a button to the second act, or was it the dancer itself?
It was the dancer.
By the movements?
By the movement.
Was there choreography, set choreography, or was she improvising?
She was improvising within a set of rules.
Compromisation.
Was it like your piece was like pre-composed, or how was it? What was
Generative.
it? Was generative. Yeah. Okay. So what did you, for example, for the first scene, there is the until a moment comes, you play one patch.
Yeah.
And then a moment comes whenever, and then it starts playing the second patch, sort of switches.
Yeah.
So the first patch has some rules that you want the programmer to put in that will create some sort of generative music that you wanted to hear, right? Yeah. So you were the creative director for the program. Let's put it that way. So your creative decisions, how did you how did you communicate it to the programmer, aside from the whole conceptual, oh, this is a living album,
I have to say that it was a project with Robin Cook and Conspiracy, and they are both very creative programmers. Yeah. So that's in that way very easy to communicate the conceptual thing.
I guess practical examples would be really helpful.
How was the transition? That's what I'm wondering. How was the transition between the first scene and the next scene?
Yeah, is it like punk?
Is it like a crossfade, or was it the same patch?
No.
Even it was a different patch. And was it like a crossfade? So was it first sending information to the one patch, and slowly?
Yeah, it was all very gradual. And I think we have the DJ concept here.
It was 2 laptops or something?
No, it was one laptop. But
so it's,
you can mix music in a lot of different ways. By filtering, by crossfades.
I'm not so much actually worried about how you make the transition, but what's like for me at least is like how do you make it sound like the first piece was actually composed? Like, did it have a Form. Yeah, basically.
No, the question is.
Or form, but there was a set of rules that created the musical content that fits the first act.
The dancer made the form.
Yeah.
The dancer made the form.
I think, and then I think as a composer or developer, you have to really know the dancer really well to create these mappings.
I think the most important thing was we talked a lot about sound quality.
You were sort of, in a way, sort of shadowing with sound and movements. Was it really direct? The way she was doing a certain movement from one moment to another, and your music was sort of following it, or I'm just trying to imagine, because I didn't hear the piece, so it's really.
You can connect every to every.
Yeah, I know, but what was your choice? Like, what kind of choice did you do?
We tried both. Very one-to-one, and more complex systems. And when we performed it a few times, the reaction of the audience was that it was hard to understand the connection. The set of rules and what you actually see. That's artistic decision.
Is it maybe because the music is following the dancer instead of sometimes the other way around?
So about with the dancer.
The dancer becomes a musician.
Yeah. But music needs to develop from the parameters it gets from the dancer.
That's what I was trying to ask. If you open the system to the dancer's influence, you're turning your system into an instrument, sort of. And then where is the composition? You know what I mean? Like, if she's doing the composition, then what did you do? Did you design the sound?
The choreography is the composition.
Okay, if that's the case, then you didn't make the composition. You sort of designed how they sound, like you sort of orchestrated
of the patches.
Okay.
But it also was a collaboration, of course. So you had also a lot to say in her choreography.
Okay. Cool. Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
No, but this happens quite a lot, I think.
Not always.
Okay.
Well, it's because she said the acts define which patch is running or which rules apply, and so you should connect with the choreography, of course, and say, okay, the first act should be about that, and the second about that. So you come to a certain form of the total together, the choreography and the music, of course. Right?
Yeah, at the macro level it was about make yourself big, because then we get this information and that makes this sound. And then the sound was not exactly the same every time, but you could push it in a certain direction. So that's why I was also involved with choreography.
Yeah.
And with the program as well.
Did you have a choreographer? Or did the dancer do the choreography?
Yeah, the dancer.
Okay.
So you were like an intermediate between the two worlds.
They didn't need a choreographer. You were communicating link.
So, but in those patches, or in those programs, you had a set collection of possible sounds.
Yeah.
Right? So you had designed that system.
No, it was
but you could predict, as its designer, you could predict more or less what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So
you could say the dancer is at spot X, Y, so the sound is going to be this and that.
Yeah, or with that much delay, or with that much reverb, or those frequencies, or those. So in that sense, you did have some sort of control on the final outcome.
There is a video
without
on the internet if you want to understand it better.
No, where I'm getting at is that you are still involved in the final outcome without labeling yourself a composer. I mean, you can call yourself a music designer, for instance. Or, you know, the environment designer or whatever. But being a composer in that context, I think is problematic.
Why?
Because you don't get credit for what's going on precisely. You know, you're not a composer in the same way someone writes a piece for an orchestra is.
Is that important to you, getting that credit?
No. I'm on the other side.
Okay.
I don't want people to call me a composer.
Okay.
But every performance of an orchestra is different, right? So what is the difference then?
The fact that you wrote it down on paper and that has really a meaning.
The difference is
setting it in stone.
Yeah, setting it in stone.
Yeah, that's not
and
social convention.
I'm going to print max patches.
That's notation.
Interpret that.
No, it's the whole structure of power in the Western music. It's like the composer who gets most money out of this should have the final, you know, saying. And usually you see the composer sitting in rehearsals and saying, no, like that! Or like, your note was a bit too... it's about control. It's about
she did that as well, in this case. She communicated between the software developers like, no, it should be more like that. And to the dancer, no, if you do this, then it sounds a lot better. So she is, in fact, the composer in this. Yeah.
Or director. I mean, it's all words. The words.
Yeah, of course, it's all about definition. Blah blah blah.
In this case, it's all the same.
I think it's really interesting.
And maybe it's nice to say that when we performed at Born in Rotterdam, after the performance we just leave the camera and everything, and people start to play the system.
And was it still? I was thinking, was it still interesting to listen to, or was it?
Yeah, but it was not a piece.
That's the interesting point. Where do you call a piece, and why do you not call it a piece?
Well, that's the same with somebody.
I want to listen here from. That was a question. When do you call it a piece, and when do you not call it a piece?
Yeah, we started the project with this concept about Big Brother and cameras everywhere and constantly being observed. And that was something. Yeah, exactly. And that was what we tried to put in the movements of the dancer and in the music and in the visuals as well. And then you work out everything and someone just starts to play with it. And it's still music, but there's this concept. And the meaning, because you start with this. And then you miss this part when someone is just playing. Then it becomes an instrument again.
That's really interesting.
I wanted to ask, do you have the feeling you build an instrument and you're just telling the player, in this case the dancer, how to play it?
And then it becomes a piece.
And then you're a composer.
It's just a teacher.
No, actually, like it's more like really like she built I don't know, clarinet, and then got a player, and then said like play this like this sort of. You have a bit of freedom, but I want you to do sort of this kind of feelings or whatever. It's like actually in a sense it's kind of a conductor, composer, director, instrument builder, blah, 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 whatever. I mean, I'm taking them from conventional titles.
What I like about your project, that you let it open for people to walk in.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, an orchestra won't leave their instruments on stage.
People to play with, right?
It's a different kind of social structure.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm
yeah, but it's also non-physical.
in that sense, why not?
Camera.
The camera is non-physical.
Wow.
What?
Physical.
No.
You don't touch it. I mean, it's just you're using your own body and space.
Non-tactile.
Did you have the impression, or did you hear comments from the public that after they tried it, the magic was lost? I can imagine. No, you didn't have.
No, I
For you personally, when you tried out Robin and Casper's system, was the magic lost to you, or when you saw the dancer while you knew how the system worked? Was the magic still
because
there?
It's a lot of fun
Yeah.
just to play with it.
Okay.
And I
But then
think
it's-
that was the experience of the people who chatted after.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I'm working on a dance piece right now, also with data input and a combination of composition and improvisation. And for me, there's no magic at all. I know exactly what's happening all the time, and
This can still be beautiful.
it's extremely hard for me to distinguish if it communicates still, because it's the interpretations of people are completely different from my own.
Yeah.
I'm just seeing numbers and values and.
You're
But
not
look-
listening.
Yeah, it's not like
No.
if you're a painter, you can look at it through a mirror and you get a fresh look at it.
Is that a trick?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it works.
Oh, that's cool.
But
Yeah,
I don't know if
exactly.
there's an audio equivalent.
They use
Reverse.
two mirrors.
Yeah. We listen it through white noise or something. But
reverse of the wave,
Yeah.
something like that.
all right, it's 5 minutes before 11, so
We
I
wrap up.
think,
But can I pinpoint one thing we almost touched on?
Mhm.
It's the difference between, well, with this new technology, especially with computers on stage, people tend to look for the trick, the magic trick inside there, and it works like that. Like
I try not to do it, but still.
yeah, well, at least a lot of people from our study does that, and I heard it all the time in school. It's just doing that, and
That's not about.
yeah, but
It's not effects.
we're all the programmers and
but,
makers.
I mean, if you look at a guitar player just playing a piece, you know exactly how the instrument works.
Yeah.
Well,
You
you
are
do-
a guitar player and
You do that as a
Still, but
musician
then
as
you
well.
still think it's cool, right?
No, I mean,
also.
you have to be impressed. You have to be impressed somehow.
Yeah,
That's this
true.
point of view also applicable to any discipline.
Yeah, it's you're admiring the virtuosity, you're admiring the knowledge, the skill, or whatever craft. But there's also, if you go beyond that, there are some people who, even when you figure out their craft, and it could be very complex or not so compact, but there could be an extra or another layer that you still appreciate. And I don't necessarily. I mean, it could be. It's not one or the other.
No, but what I mean is with computers on stage, people tend not to look at it that way.
Because there is very rarely
They
an
don't
actual
see the
performance
skills
going
or
on.
something like that.
With computers on stage, there's very rarely visual performance going on, physical performance. With guitar, there's you admire the finger movements, the way it moves, and then you say like, oh, I can't do that, I have to practice it. Even when you can play it the exact same way or really good, there is still another kind of body in it or whatever on the stage.
I still had the same with Alex Novitz, even though it was very physical performance with gestural interfaces. Still was like, okay, what's this parameter doing?
Yeah.
I mean, even if you figure it out, you can still enjoy that, I would say,
Yeah.
because he is very physical and call me very conservative, but I really like the theatricality or the physicality of the thing on the stage. And behind computer, I mean, the only thing that stimulates me is the intellectual or thinking what's going on, what kind of thing he did, and when I figure it out, I'm satisfied because there's nothing else for me to see or for me to experience. For me, at least. I'm not saying that's the case for everyone, but that's what I lack.
But isn't that the whole point of composition?
Sorry?
Well, the technical aspect is fun, but when you realize how an electronic or software instrument or whatever works, then that's, oh, okay, so it works like that. But then the next step is, what do you do?
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
put it in context.
Yeah.
Actually, it's two different ways of listening. So you listen for the patch or you listen for the music, and it's two different things.
Yeah, but you listen first, you listen to the patch because you want to steal it, and then you enjoy the music.
That depends, I don't know.
No, it's not a first and then, it's not a serial thing, it's a
No,
parallel
I
thing.
would say
No, it's either or. It's the other doings.
Yeah,
or
but you can do.
both. I mean,
Yeah, but it's a bit like this constantly. It doesn't move like this.
Like your focus
I
point
have-
is
I
more
work
on
with-
one or the other.
Sorry?
Your focus point is more on the other, or on one or on the other.
I think.
I like this. I want to steal it. I like this.
It's an example. I work with this choreographer and I write the soundscape, and she's like, "Oh, it's beautiful, it's great. Oh, listen to that." And then I show it to Yorick, and it's like, "Oh, you did this and you did that."
yeah.
Dude, come on! Yeah, I expect better from you.
No, but it's
But she liked it and it's beautiful. And the people liked it. Like, yeah, but.
Yeah, the formal and the conceptual and the
yeah, but it's a completely different way of looking
engineering.
at something. I mean, it's just from the difference between the experience of something and educational value.
Yeah, he has a duty and.
It's
Yeah, also
easy to
just-
learn your new techniques and stuff like that. So
But it's also like
might be watching.
personality at some point, even, I would say, I dare to say.
Well,
Yeah, they're like
last time.
the engineering mind, and then there's the programmer, and then there's this visual artist mind, and then there's this. Yeah, it's just the creative is not just one kind, and the way you appreciate it is a little bit. And person has different priorities.
Right, great ending.
Okay, let's wrap up.
Yes.
Okay, I thought this last second half went way better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Good. Thank you, Marike, for
for the long explanation.